The historic meeting that's taking place even as we speak between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. You may recall this is the first meeting between the two of them since Putin's invasion of Ukraine back in 2022. And so what is the Russians' end game from a military perspective? Well, here now to discuss this with me is retired Brigadier General John Teichert. He's former Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for the Air Force for International Affairs. General Teichert, welcome back to Washington Watch. An honor to have you.
Jody, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Okay, so what do you expect is going to happen during this summit?
Jody, I think the president has been very clear that he is not there to negotiate. He is there to set conditions so that there can be a follow-on meeting that includes President Zelensky so that Russia and Ukraine can negotiate together. But I also think the president has been very clear that if he doesn't see real tangible outcomes that demonstrate either an immediate ceasefire or an agreement or commitment to have that follow-on negotiation, then he's going to be not just extremely disappointed, but he's going to continue to feel disrespected by Putin, who thus far has negotiated and acted in bad faith. And that will mean that the United States will levy some of these additional elements of national power into the mix, including sanctions and secondary sanctions, to raise the pain threshold for Putin so he realizes it is in his best interest to either accept the ceasefire or to start really negotiating in good faith.
Yeah, I think those sanctions and so forth could be very detrimental to already a fragile economy that they have there. So what do you think? Is it as obvious as it looks? But what is Putin's end game with these talks? What is he hoping to come away with?
Jody, I think that he has been mystified during these last 3.5 years that somehow the mighty Russian power hasn't been able to subjugate Ukraine. And frankly, there's no future on the horizon in which he would be able to do so. So either now the outcome is Putin hoping to dazzle President Trump, he's hoping to delay, he's hoping to maybe create a wedge issue between the United States and Ukraine or the United States and Europe, and all of those things are in his repertoire. But I think President Trump is very clear-eyed in his desire to see that ceasefire or commitment for follow-on negotiations. And anything short of that, he will see through President Putin as just a delay tactic in his negotiation plan of bad faith.
Okay, very interesting. You know, I think also, obviously, I think he wants some sort of concessions. Do you think there's a scenario where Putin might feel emboldened by keeping some of the territory that he feels he's conquered?
I think there's a lot of maneuver room once we get Ukraine in the room to discuss geography, security, and economy, and elements within those three areas to find a way to end this war. But I very much believe that President Trump is not there now to negotiate. And while Putin may try to push him on accepting concessions, that the President of the United States thus far showing that he is in his home field advantage with a position of strength is not going to get pushed around by Putin, is going to insist either on that ceasefire or the commitment for follow-on negotiations that include Ukraine.
Very good point. Very good point. All right, so how do we handle these talks and what may come out of it, specifically as it relates to a greater adversary, China? What wrong signals perhaps are at stake in these talks that can be messaged and received by China?
Jody, I think it's important to realize that China is watching, but not just these talks, but they've been watching for the last 3.5 years to see how the United States follows on its commitments. By the way, Xi Jinping and China were watching 2 months ago when the United States launched those 7 B-2s and dropped those massive ordnance penetrators in Iran. And I think all of those things demonstrate both a strength of capability from the United States and a strength of will. And those are the two primary elements that create deterrence, or the ability to stop somebody from doing the things that you don't want them to do. And if we negotiate from a position of strength and we continue to demonstrate through our words and our actions commitment and strength, then it puts China and others like Iran or like North Korea on their back foot, realizing that the United States continues to have not just escalation dominance, but also is exuding a position of deterrence so that they must not do the things we do not want them to do.
And don't you think at the same time, the fact that President Trump has been having conversations with leaders throughout Europe, that Europe is uniting together as a strength of their own, like we've not seen in a long time? That comes into play with all of this as well, doesn't it?
Well, I think that it does, Jody. And I think that in a lot of ways, Putin's already lost this war. That we added 2 new members to NATO, Finland and Sweden, and we have seen a consolidation of European strength and a commitment to raise their defense spending now to that 5% threshold. All of those have come partly because President Trump has encouraged them to do that, but also because they've seen that the world is a dangerous place with people like Putin, Xi, and others. And the more the world is a dangerous place, the more good, strong partnerships like NATO and our European allies will bind and bond together to make sure that they're able, again, to enhance that deterrent posture that the United States already exudes well in our own situation.
All right, last question real quickly, and we've only got about a minute. How could this have other repercussions, rippling effect beyond this meeting? I'm thinking specifically China, maybe the eager population there. Where do the rippling effects, repercussions go, you think?
Jody, I do think it's interesting that we've talked a little bit in the last year and a half in the national security spheres about this axis between Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. But I think what we saw a couple months ago in Iran is that the big dogs, Russia and China, didn't jump in to help their partner. And I think this axis is extremely superficial, and it really is transactional. It's not a deep, trusting partnership like the United States has with its allies and partners. It is something that is extremely transactional, and frankly, all of those entities that I mentioned will walk away if they don't see in their best interest to continue to add benefit to that axis.
Thank you so much, Brigadier General John Teichert, for your expertise. Fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.